On a Tuesday? What do you mean? It's always on a Tuesday. Wait, why is everyone so surprised that it's on a Tuesday? Sorry for not popping the chat up on the screen. I had a couple of issues in the beginning because it created 2 streams again. I don't know why, but we got it fixed. Yeah, lovely to see you all. Hello, Barris. Hello, Jill Bill Whitwill. Why is your name so long? It's like a tongue twister, you know? Hello, Adam. Hello, Peanut MR. Welcome, welcome. Anton as well. We're back on the medieval music, so it's gonna be a throwback because I was so tired of like the other music. Yeah, we're back on the medieval tunes. Put some of the lights as well. Yeah, there we go. How is everybody doing? Hope everyone has a lovely week. I mean, we're still at the start of it, so still a lot of the week left to go. It's been pretty busy. I feel like this week has been busier than normal weeks. Like the weekend as well. So I feel like I didn't really have one. Even though I didn't really do much. It was just more work. And a workshop as well, which was awesome. But yeah, still work. Yeah. The workshop was great, by the way. Massive shout out to Javier Perez for running the workshop. I don't know if people in the chat were there, but yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Ferdinand, a good question to start at the stream. How do we send our portfolios? There is, there should be, should I say, there should be a link in the chat down below where you can submit your questions, but I'm honestly not too sure if that still is there, so let me double check that. I'll post it in the chat as well. The way that this works, though, is that all the people from our community, they get front row seats, and they basically get to skip the queue compared to everyone else. When will the workshop be on YouTube? That depends. So, Karim, who's normally organizing the workshops, he's currently in Japan. I'm honestly not sure when he's going to be back. And we're also in the midst of talks with our first editor as well. I don't think they're going to be editing this workshop, but they're doing some trial runs right now. And then hopefully, if that works out, we can get workshops out to you quicker than before, which would be awesome. As for this workshop, I estimate somewhere next week, I think, or maybe the weekend after. It all depends on when Karim is back. But we will definitely let you know once it's out on our social media, so keep following us there to stay up to date. Let me actually double check and verify if the link is in the chat. The link is not in the chat. Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad that I posted it anyway. So yeah. Hey Tuan! Nice to see you. Have a nice day. Oh, thank you so much. Have a nice day as well. Yeah, what else has been happening? It's been, yeah, like a lot of organization actually. A lot of organization. So, yeah, not really too much on like the news front. I haven't made that much progress on the book, which hopefully I get through the edit like this weekend, hopefully, because that would be awesome. So this weekend will be just another weekend of just like working on the book, I think. What else has been happening? Just normal day-to-day stuff. Busy at work as well. Pretty chill, but busy. So everything on that side is pretty good. Hello, Sheila. Hello, Tessie. Glad to see you both here. Hope you're doing well. Just stopping by while at work. You're gonna be up in the running today, Cole. To be honest, I never had someone reviewing portfolios like you do. Yeah, the only other person that I can think of is Dynasty. I'm not sure how long the waiting line on that one is, but yeah. It's also we're both like very portfolio, like environment art focused, right? So I'm not sure if that's going to be helpful. Hey, Rat One, welcome. God, I feel a sneeze coming. What? We're back. Oh no, my portfolio. Yes, it's been a while. How long has it been? What is the current backlog actually? Give you guys timelines here. I know that we're still working through the backlog, so this is from, oh god, from June. Is that right? Yeah, from end of June. So that's where we're currently at with like the community members. So still chewing through that backlog. We'll get through it. Hello, Hudson. Hiding my sneeze? Yeah, I gotta be polite. I gotta show my best self on stream, you know? I'm not gonna be snottering like all over the screen. To be fair, that's like I have to like double and triple check because yeah, mustache and beard doesn't combine well with like sneezing, so I have a question I'm curious about. What's the most effective way for an environment artist to learn Substance Designer? The most effective way? That is a very good question. There's some great tutorials from Daniel Tiger out there. So basically go to the people that are known for doing Substance, see if they have tutorials, and learn from them. That's probably like the most effective way to do anything, right? The way that I did it was like, okay, these guys are cool, but I'm just gonna play around and see if I can figure it out myself. Which is kind of the way that I do a lot of stuff. That's just like my general approach to life, I feel. Which takes way longer. So definitely not the most effective way, but definitely the way that I love to learn things. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many ways. Like I think oh my god, Substance Designer. Let me warp back in time when I was first learning that. I think honestly like the main thing that you just have to really get good at is understanding how like black and white values impact your textures, right? Because obviously you're going to start with like your height map first. So you want to get really familiar with like the impact of like how to blend like different black and white maps together in the most effective way. So learning like what type of blendings there are and all that kind of stuff. Hey, medieval music feels like nostalgia. I know, right? I know. We're back on a medieval stream. We even got it in the background as well. Oh my god, it's been ages since I worked on that. Need to get stuff out of the way first. Your room is always changing every stream? Is it? I haven't done anything. We're just standing up now. That's the only difference. Learn your blends, get your blends here. Oh my god. Just a Substance Designer seller. I honestly maybe maybe you can see like a Substance Designer seller or something somewhere on like a marketplace somewhere, but the way that I imagine it is like just like the old school, like just open the coat, like get your blends, you know? Like the shady seller instead of like the actual real seller. 3DX is the best. The most effective way is to learn how nodes work, because no one will teach you how to make moss metallic alien fire. Oh my god. That is some chaos in the material right there. Yeah, like honestly, like we had a workshop with Javier Perez this weekend actually, and he kind of basically got the same question. So And I think his answer was, if you wanted to start with a material, pick something that has like a very recognizable pattern, right? Something like tiles, bricks, something very noticeable, very easy, quote unquote, easy to get into, because that allows you to start with a pattern and then see how you need to chip away from that pattern and like change that pattern up to make it interesting. Um Also getting it into the engine real fast. Normally I would agree, but not really for learning Substance Designer, because you got the 3D preview, right? You don't care about like making it into like a titleable just yet. You're in the beginning mostly just focusing about like, okay, what different nodes do I use? How can I combine them? So it's all just like Substance Designer focused, right? Even though normally I would agree, right? Like with anything else, get it into the engine as quick as possible. So once you work your way through the learning stages, that's where you want to get into the engine as quick as possible, right? I can feel you getting healthier just by standing. Yeah, yeah, I've been walking every day as well. So, I mean, we're working on it, step by step. Documentation and Daniel Tiger and lots of documentation. Yeah, honestly, yeah, that is the way that everything works, especially once you're in the industry. Like browsing documentation is like a skill by itself. What are the most common programs for environment artists? It kind of depends on which branch of environment artist you are. If you are like a level artist who spends a lot of time on like set dressing and like telling stories and all that kind of stuff, then you are just gonna have to get familiar with like your modeling program and the engine. That's it, right? If you work at like a smaller company, you're gonna have to spread out a little bit more. But I would honestly say the common programs are always just whatever modeling package you use, Substance Designer, Substance Painter, and your game engine. That's it. That's like the environment artist base package. And then if you want to get a bit more organic, you add like Substance, ZBrush to the mix. If you want to get a little bit more technical, you maybe plug in some Houdini somewhere. Like, but yeah, the base package kind of stays the same. Ugh, MS Paint. Do you usually use the SBAR files? I feel like they are the future. 4K texture in a 30 kilobyte file? No, I've never ever used SBSAR files in my life. I mean, that's a lie. I mean, whenever I was selling materials that I was making myself, I used SBSAR files, but I've never used them inside of the industry. To be fair, I'm also not a material artist, right? But like mostly, you just convert them to textures and that's it. SBSBR for Painter, maybe? Yeah, there's probably cool stuff that you can do there. Yeah, I would agree. To be fair, like it's been, I kid you not, like 5 years ago that I tried to use an SBS AR inside of Unreal Engine, and it was really slow back then, and I've never tried it again. So I assume that they've like sped up the process, and it also depends on how you make your materials as well, right? So, but no, most of the time, yeah, most of the time you just like convert it to textures and then throw it into the engine. Oh yeah, yeah. I know what they're for. I've worked with them before. It's just they're really not usable in like the engine. As soon as you start like to do like a little bit more complex materials, plus the way that you have to think about it is generally you don't really care about the flexibility of a material inside, well, of a texture inside of the engine, because what is going to happen is you have your static textures, right? So non-SBSAR files, these are just like normal PNGs, TIFFs, or whatever you want to use. use them, and then you'd throw them into like a shader to then start blending them together, right? Because I feel like whenever you're doing like an SBSAR file, you're gonna run into like, okay, but how do we blend them together now, right? So you get like variation, but I want to blend them together inside of my engine of choice. Which, how do you do that, right? Because it is just like a really expensive thing by itself, and then let alone if you want to like combine 4 of them in like a single material, if that even would be possible, that would be crazy. Daniel Tiger is absolutely amazing. I've been watching a few of his tutorials and have been incredibly helpful. Thanks for all the advice. Yeah, Daniel Tiger is really good. It is still nice to have. Yeah, there are potentially use cases for that. I just don't know what the use cases would be like on the top of my head. Apart from like using them in Substance Painter, right? Like that makes sense. But as soon as you go into the engine, like it doesn't start making sense. At least to me. There might be some really genius people out there that are doing crazy stuff with SBSER files, but for some versatility, I also try Niagara in Unreal to create some magic to enhance the mood in the main object. If this was in reference to like what the standard programs are, it's totally fine if you use Niagara, right? Like there's nothing wrong with it. But usually the way that I try to treat it is like that is like a completely different discipline, which is like VFX artist, right? So if you then spend like a whole bunch of time on that, you're basically training for like 2 separate like professions out there. Substance Engine version 9 is really crazy. I've honestly got no idea. Okay, context, I am still on like Substance 2020. So, yeah, I hope that paints the picture. Since we're talking about this, can you recommend content to start learning Unreal Engine? Honestly, for Unreal Engine, I keep recommending just like Unreal Engine themselves. Like they have like really great tutorials just to get you from beginning to like more complex things. Like they have a great learning portal. Yeah, honestly, that's the one that I would recommend. There's no like other like starting tutorial for like Unreal Engine necessarily. Yeah, there's more advanced stuff. For example, there's I think there's multiple presentations now, but they're usually called something like 35 things you didn't know about Unreal Engine. They're like really interesting to watch if you are a bit more advanced in Unreal, because they showcase like a different side of the engine that you usually don't touch. And I've learned like a lot of really interesting things from there. For example, that there's a way, I've not used this myself, especially not recently, but that there is a way to like change the materials on separate assets without changing the material instance. But you can do that with like, I don't know, there's like a little hidden button somewhere that allows you to create like a more optimal version where you just want to override like a single value or something like that. Somehow has environment art in marketing form. Oh, on the Niagara. Yeah, it can definitely enhance your scenes. Like statistics menu? No, it was God, I forgot what it's called. Something asset data or something like that. There was something before it, but I can't remember the name. The Unreal Engine official channel, those guys are amazing. As I'm into plugins, they have everything, but majority of YouTubers are not into teaching Unreal. So most of them are just $14 courses. Yeah, I've honestly not checked like any courses out there. Like the only environment art course that I know is from Tiago Klavke, right? So I can only recommend that one. And I've seen some good stuff coming out of it. What's wrong with Unreal? What's wrong with Unity? Well, yeah, they have to. There's a lot going on inside that company. Let's call it that way, huh? Let's see. Yeah, but I hope that was helpful, Blender Camp. Dreaming of becoming an environment artist at Remedy, who did Alan Wake. Yeah, that's cool. That is cool. Maybe that's why the plugin hasn't been updated in a while. Could be, could be. Oh, the portal nodes? Yeah. I know that I'm missing those. That's honestly, like straight up, that's the only reason why I would update to like the newer versions. Like the rest of the features that they have added are just like inconsequential to me. Like, yeah, which is fine. But splines, maybe. That's yeah. There could be an argument there. Yeah, I've seen some cool stuff done with splines. That's true. Yeah, it's been a while since I worked in it anyway. Okay, let's switch on over to some portfolios. I would say if you want to ask any questions in the meantime, feel free to do so, and then we'll discuss those in between the portfolios. Yeah, that's a good shout. The splines, I completely forgot about them. Let's have a look. Pineapples on pizza? No, because they get like too warm and too wet. I don't like that. Not a fan of pineapples on pizza. Not a fan. Let's see. I need to actually grab my pen before we can start doing anything. First portfolio that we have for today is from Sophie. From Sophie Desaro. Desaro. Let's roll the R a little bit. Oh, it's Canada. It's not French. It's Quebecois. I don't know how to speak Quebecois though. Let's have a look. I sort of have the feeling that we looked at this already. Am I mistaken? No clue. I feel like I'm losing my mind a little bit. Let's zoom out a little bit as well. Okay, so first I kind of want to see at what the description is. So we got junior environment artist, which you can't see because it's covered up by the chat. We gotta trust me on that one. Let's see. 3D artist student that specializes in environments. Feedback is always welcome to become better. A portfolio is not a place where you necessarily want to have feedback, right? So I would honestly not ask for feedback on your portfolio. Let's see. So that would be the first thing, right? You don't ask for feedback. I did a previous degree in office work and graphic design and always loved drawing on the side. That could be interesting, especially the graphic design thing, right? That you mentioned that you did graphic design before. That's pretty pertinent information if you're doing like a graphic job in the future. And that's pretty cool. Let's see. Oh, there is a reel as well. It is a couple of years old, though. Let's see. Yeah, 3 years old. Norse Cave. Can't maximize it? Interesting. So this is interesting, but like you're just showing off like the final version, right? Like, and this is probably going to be like a repetitive or like a thing that we'll bring up like a couple of times. Is that whenever you're doing like game art, we kind of want to see how you achieve the things that you did or how you would break them down, right? So that would mean that in that case, I want you to switch between like, oh, here's the final result, but here's also like how I achieved it, how I built it up. Like I kind of want to see the progress a little bit, right? The process. Um yeah, that was pretty cool. So like basically this is all after 2021 then, right? So 2 years ago, 2 years ago, and then 8 months ago. It's a cool little fella. That's nice. This is where the splines come in, huh? Like we were talking about? Spline work over here? Sun and the moon. That's cool. Cool little texture challenge over here. Let's start with the overall portfolio though. That's kind of where I want to start. So my first impressions are okay. Like I'm not too sure about having these two guys over here. Actually look. Because a part of the screen is getting cropped off. So let me try and fix that real quick. Doo-doo-doo. Oh god, how are we gonna do this? No, I don't want to stretch it either. Ugh! It's gonna be so ugly, but hey, at least you can see the full thing. Let's do it like this. Yeah, so what I was saying, so I don't really like immediate reaction from like these thumbnails is that that work is like really old and is just like pretty dated, right? And your portfolio is always like just your best work on display, right? You don't want to drag it down by like having these things in your portfolio that immediately drag down my perception of the work that you have, right? So you always want to put like your best work forward because your portfolio is only as good as your weakest piece, right? So keep that in mind. And these two immediately not getting good vibes from them. We're gonna check them out in a little bit. I think this is 2D. So maybe actually let's switch over to this. Okay. Let me actually see, because you did change them up, right? Okay, so let's keep it representable. Is that like school projects? That's all school projects. That's lighting. Okay, so let's stick to the environment art tab then. I would still honestly get rid of those like things that we discussed. But then this one is not on here. Okay, so it's a bit confusing, right? So you have your environment and level art tab, but then I would honestly put these, this is a level, right? This is a level, so this remains, this needs to be in this tab. So like already like pretty chaotic, pretty all over the place. I don't know, like this just confusion that's happening currently could also reflect like pretty bad on you again, right? Where like, do you know what level art is compared to material art, and like, is that obvious, right? I know that I'm like over exaggerating a little bit, but I'm trying to be pretty open and honest, because that's also like you only get like a split second, right, with a recruiter where they're gonna be like, oh wait, why is that in here? That's a little bit weird. And then also with like the older projects, like immediately where you have that split second decision where they see that and their initial impression is going to be yes or no, right? so you don't have like time for anything. So my initial impression, let's stick with the full overview then, is these need to go. I'm not sure about the mature content. I'm not going to click on that. So that might also need to go, question mark. And then definitely sort out like the folders here as well. Because currently you could like easily optimize them and just say like, hey, I want to focus on environment art. That is the only folder that I'm going to have. If I then have like an old work folder, right? Where, I don't know, potentially these guys could live. Potentially. That could work as well. But like you don't need this many folders because you don't have that many projects yet, right? So keep it simple and keep it easy to navigate. There's also my initial impression here is that you have game art mixed with VFX workflows, right? Because I'm seeing Nuke. Nuke is very standard in like a VFX pipeline for like movies and stuff. So that also makes me question if that is like, is that what you want to do? Or is that just like a fluke that happened to be in your portfolio, right? And again, it might be in like, it's in this folder as well, which doesn't make sense, right? Like the only reason why it would make sense is because it's Unreal. But yeah. It's more cinematics and VFX orientated. So, with that initial impression out of the way, let's dive into some work then. Pen app looks cool. Which is it? This is called Epic Pen. It's pretty nice. Okay, we're gonna maximize this again. Let's have a look at some work. Hello, Puns. Good to see you here. I'm doing good. How about yourself? The semi-stylized moss texture that I did for the school project was the first texture I created in Substance Design. Okay. It's cool. Did you use that on like the stylized statue as well then? Okay. The pink one is one that I revisited. Okay. So this is not like an art review, right? But yeah, there's definitely a lot that you can do in making the low poly like more representable compared to your high poly, right? Because you have like a nice, like a lot of nice, like let's say the wings, right? They have like lots of nice like insets and curves and all that kind of stuff, but like there's no opportunity for them to like really shine in the low poly because it all gets baked down, right? Let's see. So the Okay, but what I would say is because you have your moss, right? So you have your moss over here. Combine the two in one, right? Say that you created a moss for the statue, and here it is, like with the statue presented as well. Like, it's always good to show like a material within its context. So context is important. Right? Also because I'm gonna be questioning like why did you do it in such a way where you have like an alpha around it, right? Because if you just have like a normal tileable, you can just like paint it on top of like on top of your statue without any issues. You just have to like have a mask where it like blends based on the height of it, right? I know that this is like a lot of terminology that I'm just throwing at you, but yeah, that is definitely something that you can look into. But yeah, overall presentation, it's okay. You got like a little spinny marmoset preview going on, which is good. I actually quite like the texture itself as well. It seems like it's photo based, right? So it's like a good experimentation into like how that workflow works and how you can like take that to like the next level in your next products, right? Which is pretty interesting. There's some experimentation going on here, which is cool to see. One environment art done last year. So this is 3ds Max and Photoshop. So I'm assuming that you did like a paint over on this, right? So this kind of leans more into concept art, right? This is not necessarily level art, or environment art, right? This is more akin to concept art. Let's see, water effects. Because here's the thing, like these water effects and mini bubbles in Photoshop, like it's fine to do like smaller tweaks, right? But like if you want to become like an environment artist, you kind of have to take into account that everything has to be real time running always, right? So if you want to become an environment artist, you would have to do this thing, but then let it run into Unreal, right? Do something like that that's real time. That's going to be very difficult. Underwater stuff is like really tricky. Translucent materials. It's very, very difficult to get right, especially real time. But yeah, this is sort of like a weird like in between where this mostly leans towards concept art, in my opinion. Again, it's a cool experimentation into different techniques, right? And this is definitely going to be helpful in the future where you can use those same techniques if you want to present your work towards like an art director or someone like that, right? Where you say like, hey, I got a couple of ideas. I'm going to make like a couple of quick mock-ups and do like 3 variations. Here you go. Pick the one that you lean the most towards, right? This can definitely be helpful in the future. It's just if you want to present yourself as an environment artist, this is more of like a side skill. So I would not get rid of this, right? I would keep this on your portfolio, but I just want you to know that this is like a thing that could be helpful, but not to like your core skill set necessarily in your day-to-day. There's obviously some material work and some texturing work that's gone into it, but yeah. This is where we get to the meat and the potatoes. Trim sheets. Bottle, fountain design. Cool little fountain design. It's just an overpaint on like the 2D mesh, 3D mesh, right? It's pretty cool. I like that. I like that flow of working where it's like, oh, I wanna quickly sketch out some ideas before I actually start modeling it. This is cool to see, like a cool additional thing. I would definitely think about like how you present your work though. So you have just like a bunch of like cropped screenshots here. Think about how you would present them to like an actual professional audience, right? So let's say, what will be a good example? Let's say like a big art director from whatever studio you like is like watching this. How would you present it to them? And let's make it extreme, right? Like let's say it's your only chance to present them something like that. Like you kind of have to treat it like that because you never know who might be watching your portfolio, right? Hudson is saying GIFs. It doesn't need to be GIFs necessarily. What I'm more talking about is that a crop of like your ZBrush screen feels really quick and feels really cheap to do, right? So you have to think about the presentation a bit. And even if you want to crop it that way, take the couple of extra steps to get rid of like all the extra information that you don't need at the edges and take it into Photoshop, have like a nice background. Like you can take it to the next level like pretty quickly by just doing a little bit of Photoshop. Plus, Sophie, you have like a bunch of like Photoshop skills anyway. So you could really put those to good use, right? Got a trim sheet here. 2 trim sheets? Two trim sheets? Why? So this hints again at like the thing that I was saying before, right? Where I want to see how you like used your trim sheets, right? So maybe showing off like your UVs, but like a trim sheet is always chaotic because it just doesn't look good. But find a way to like present, like if you're saying, hey, I used 2 trim sheets, where did you use them, right? Or is that just like an iteration? I'm not sure actually. Let's see. What is unique? So got like this more damage stone as well. Oh, that corner section is pretty unique. Can we see that somewhere? That's over there. So they are used, which is interesting. So an asset of this size you can easily do with a single trim sheet. One quick way to already make a lot of space, like open up a lot of space, is that you use vertex paint to blend in what material needs to be mossy, right? So this is something that you would do in the engine, where like for example the stuff underwater, you just paint that with like vertex paint, and then you can see that like moss is only going to spread into that area, right? This is not something that you would bake into your trim sheet. You want to keep your trim sheet as flexible as possible without baking in like a lot of like layered information. We got some of this. I think, yeah, you can make some like really quick wins with just like improving the presentation of this. And also for the next project that you do with a trim sheet, like try to optimize like how much you use from the trim sheet, right? Again, we're not going to be talking too much about the art. We're going to keep it like pretty high level, but I want to see a better use of your roughness map in specifically. Like that map is like the key to making something like read realistic or not, right? So you kind of have to take that into account and try to use like your roughness maps in the best way that you can. Because for example, like some of the stonework is like really shiny, especially because they almost have like the same value as something that still is underwater as well, right? For which the normal map might be like a little bit intense too. Let's see, we already had a quick look at this one. These ones are like pretty old as well. I'm kind of just gonna jump forward, and I kind of want to see if we can find some trim sheets in this guy. See, like, I know that we were kind of looking at like older work, but like this presentation is already like miles ahead of what you presented before, right? This is great. This is a good presentation. I get like all the maps that I need. I get all the information. Oh, it even says that you use 3ds Max, probably for the modeling of the shapes and all that kind of stuff. This is good stuff, you know? You even took like the additional time to do like some Photoshop editing too, which is great. You use that one as a base. So there are some like things that you could explain like a little bit better, right? Where you could use this mosaic as like a base for this one and just like spell that out as well. That could be really helpful. Got some color variations. This is beautiful. Got some caustics going on as well. Then we got a GIF too, which is nice. Yeah. So that's like 1 year difference between this one and this one, right? And this one works really well. there's a lot that you can like still gain from like presenting it differently. Especially when it comes to like this screenshot, for example. Like, is that screenshot like as interesting as some of these guys over here? Right? Like you really need to be picky when it comes to the stuff that you put on your portfolio. And if something doesn't make the cut, then it doesn't make the cut, right? You want to, again, show yourself in the best light as possible. It's cool. There is still something weird going on with the normal map, though. I feel like the intensity of the normal map doesn't translate really from this here, to this preview, to like what is happening in Unreal Engine. There's still like a thing that gets lost in translation. Yeah. Overall, presentation is pretty good, right? You got like all the breakdowns. I can see the materials. I personally don't really care about the substance graph. Like, this is not really saying anything to me. It's just like, oh, cool. You got some nodes. I can see that you use like certain like clouds and stuff. Like, I'm not getting too much from this graph. I would honestly focus more on the actual thing that matters, right? So in this case, we're just gonna make a bunch of space by removing this guy here. I would, let's see. So this is your overview of the whole thing. You could potentially do like a fade away or something like that in the middle, where you have like a gradient transition. And then this is the context, right? This is the context screenshot, which is this guy over here, right? And then over here, you can do your little substance preview. And then have like all the different maps that you wanted to say, right? And also, just for the sake of being clean about it, just add like the names of the maps above it as well. And then maybe even here, you could say, you don't have to do this for everyone, right? But have like a little description of just saying like, oh, I created this one inside of Substance Designer, but maybe there's another one that's more unique. And you say like, oh, for this one, I actually created like the base meshes inside of 3ds Max, and then took them into Substance Designer and then did them this way, right? But yeah, you can clean this up a little bit, and then you're good to go. I really like this shot. This shot is really good. Like that a lot. The way that you have like the contrast coming from like the left and the right, really good. Yeah, you gotta be careful with the God rays here though. The God rays, like, they basically wash out the entire scene, right? Where we can't really see what's behind it. Where you want the focus to be here, which the entire environment is trying to make that work, but then the God rays kind of just like completely wash it out and remove all possibility from it becoming so, right? So in this case, if you just rotate your light and you just have the light coming in from like behind you and it's going towards like the main light, sort of like, let's see, sort of like you have it here, right? I'm imagining this sort of light in the scene, but we're just standing at the entrance and you have like a little bit of a darker like entrance, and you have like the darkness on the sides, and then you have that like bright spot in the middle, which is like going to be really nice. So the lighting can definitely use like a little bit of work, but it's just a showcase of like what you can do with like a very specific composition, because it is the same light. We're just looking at it from like a different perspective, right? What I like to do in like all my screenshots, and this is a very common technique, is called vignetting. And a vignette is basically gonna push more focus on the center of your screen. And you can set it up in your post-processing. You can just do that in Unreal. and you have like in your post-process volume, there's like a vignette that you can do, and it's basically going to darker the sides a little bit. This is happening naturally in this composition, but you can force that a little bit. Yeah. Cool use of trim sheets. The trim sheets themselves look really good as well. Oh, interesting. There's some cool stuff happening here. Where, let's see. Did you actually use that? Because that would be pretty smart, actually. Don't think so. Okay. That is cool. So what is happening here is that this straight section, this trim sheet over here, is mapped onto the pillars, but the pillars, they have like this screw kind of motif going on, right? So like the trim sheet is actually just mapped onto like the screw of itself. So this is the way of like UVs at the moment, which is creating this really cool pattern. That's why I was looking for what we were seeing here. Because at first I thought that these were like two end sections, and then you can kind of use that as like a way to create like corners on everything you want, right? Like if we take those two separately and we map them wherever we want, we basically have like a T-junction and like a corner that we can just map wherever we want that to happen. So let's say you have a floor pattern that goes up, and you then want like a corner, and then it goes straight again. You can basically just like map that corner as like a separate chunk in your UVs. So it gives you like a lot of flexibility, these two pieces. It isn't implemented like this, but still a smart use case though. I like it. I like that. Especially because like the bottom of the pillars, they work really nicely. It's a nice finishing detail, especially to do that with like trim sheets. It is very well done. I like that. That might actually be a thing that is worth pointing out as well in your breakdowns, where you just show like the pillar UVs and how you approached it. It would be very interesting to see. Okay, let's have a look at some other pieces. So we got meat mat in here as well. Kind of the same sort of motifs, right? Like the goldish, lavish blue kind of coming back. It's quite nice. Yeah, very nicely done. Very nicely done. Happy with the result? Yeah, result looks really good. Let's have a look at some older stuff. We kind of had a look at like most of this stuff already, right? So let's have a look at this. This is from 3 years ago. This is done. Yeah, this is V-Ray. So this doesn't really apply to game art anymore, right? If you're doing like V-Ray. So I was thinking that maybe this could be like salvageable if you push the lighting a bit more. But since it is V-Ray, it's very specific to like offline rendering. So yeah, like the materials and the textures look great, but I know that like V-Ray comes with like a lot of materials that you get from the beginning, right? Not saying that you didn't do any of your adjustments yourself, but yeah, it's hard for me to gauge like how much you did on this because I have no experience in V-Ray. But yeah, this doesn't really apply to like game art. So this is one of those things where I would put that in like the old work folder or like maybe the school project folder. just put that in there as well. Yeah, so let's have a look. Let's do a little breakdown, right? So what are some of the things that we said? Let's do a little recap over here. So first of all, I do want to say, like Hudson is saying as well, you definitely improved. Definitely, right? Comparing this stream sheet piece to this stream sheet piece, massive difference. And between those two, there's only a year. So that's not necessarily that much time, right? So that is great. I would definitely say remove and optimize work, right? Or optimize your portfolio. That's definitely the first thing that I would take a look at. It's always better to have less pieces of higher quality than to just have like a bunch of pieces on there that are not really adding a substantial amount to your portfolio, right? I kind of hinted at it before. I would, and whatever I put like a cross next to it, you can decide. I would say like remove them, but you can decide if you want to put that in an old work folder or whatever, right? And with removing, I'm talking about unpublishing, right? You can still keep them on your ArtStation, but just hidden for your portfolio. And then let's see. I think this is pretty outdated as well. This has definitely been like outdone massively by like the stream sheet piece. Let me see. So this could be old work. This could be old work. This one is a weird one. To me, it feels like an old work piece because it's not that relevant to the thing that you're trying to achieve as an environment artist. But it can still... Or maybe you put it in like a 2D folder or something like that. Not necessarily old, but like 2D. It's up to you. Let's see. Personal is a good idea as well, Hudson. That's a good idea. Personal as in a way to like showcase what other skills that you have. So that's a good idea. I like that. Let's actually have a look really quick at this one. What happened here? What did you do? So autumn, birch, forest, and real scene. You did photogrammetry of the ground in Nuke. Okay. Some of the key shot references were important as cards. That's not too special. Yeah, I'm not sure what the value of is here. Like, I can see the value of it being that it's like photogrammetry, right? I can definitely see it working along those lines. But then you would need to highlight like what you did and purely focus on like the photogrammetry instead. Because right now it's kind of just like, oh, I kind of just had like a photogrammetry like floor and then just added some lights and I don't know, made like a little thingy out of it. It feels very personal work again. Let me add that to the personal work folder. And then last but not least, we didn't have a look at this guy over here. Hello, Itchum! Lights position, got Gears 5 in there. I would say that honestly, this piece is massively surpassed by doing this piece. You could potentially keep it on there because now you can showcase like, oh, this is like a natural scene and this is like a more man-made scene, right? You could play it that way. So in this case, I will just say, let's keep it. But that would be like one of the first things that I would be looking at to replace potentially, right? Whenever something new comes along. So that means that we have like 3 pieces left over at the end of the day, which is very drastic But keep in mind, this is gonna be all about that initial impression where people can see like, oh, there is higher quality work here, right? That's what we're working towards. You want to showcase that you are ready for the industry, and just a lot of the pieces on here are either somewhat like they're like personal explorations, which are fine, move into a different folder. They are not relevant to the industry. For example, the one made in V-Ray or the one made in Nuke is kind of like in between. But yeah, like it doesn't align with where you want to be, right? So we need to clean that up a little bit and only show like the best work. And then some of it is just like really outdated, which is fine, right? You learn so much over time, where you can really see your progression over the years that we looked at it, right? So I'm really curious to see what you're gonna come up with next, because yeah, this is for the games industry. Oh, you remind me of something. I need to actually look at the submissions as well. Let's see. Sophie. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Hudson. There's a little bit more context. Sophie is saying it's bad to keep the old stuff, but I'm at a point where I do want to seriously get a job in 3D, but I don't have anything new currently. But I still need to do some stuff to apply, so I can't remove all the old stuff. This is wrong. Just straight up wrong. I would rather see a person with like 3 good portfolio pieces than a person with, in this case, 12, where like honestly the last pieces are so out of date that they're like really bad compared to what you can do now, right? I rather would see you coming out with like the strongest portfolio that you have rather than with everything that's on display, because some of it is no longer relevant. Again, it's fine, right? But I don't want to see the old work. You gotta put your best work forward. For the pieces that aren't there, I'm almost done with a column. I've been working on posting on Whip Wednesdays. I use a trim sheet, baking, tileable textures, and will post my materials. Okay, so this is interesting, Sophie. Baking, oh sorry, like the materials, that could be cool. I don't know what happened there, but I'm not seeing them under your portfolio, right? Maybe you didn't do them because you mentioned that you don't have enough time, which is fine, right? Yeah, but yeah, you gotta just keep working at it, keep chipping away, try to do smaller projects, but higher quality projects, right? Just allow yourself to focus on just like one thing, maybe a single asset, which is also like it comes down to what you were asking, right? Like some advice on like good pieces to do next. I would want to see you do like a singular asset, right? Almost to like the same sort of quality that this one is done, right? Like the coffee grinder. That by itself would be awesome to see. But yeah. It's not easy to get in, I'll tell you that much, especially now, but you can do it. You just have to focus on quality over quantity. Right? That's always going to be the most important thing. And then number 3 is working on your presentations. Right? You can really increase like the presentation and the lighting, right? Especially on this great environment, right? Like this environment is great, but you can really lift it up by being more deliberate with where you put your focus and how you control your focus by like lighting the environment in a specific way. For the next one, you could also think about like what you put there to focus on, right? So for example, if you have a statue that you want to focus on in the middle of the scene, that will drag the eye towards that already. Because right now you have like a beautiful pedestal in the middle of the scene and it almost calls for something to be done there, right? But I'm kind of missing a story. I'm kind of missing something to latch onto. Like it is an environment, but it's not giving me more. It's not giving me like something to latch onto. So yeah, I'm gonna add like a fourth one. So we talked about lighting and presentation, and then obviously stuff that I talked about now. Story. Tell me a story. That is your job as an environment artist in a lot of cases, and I want to see you do that, right? So the example of just having like a statue here, that could be great. What kind of statue is it? What is it for? You know, you can do so much with that. Hudson, until when? Because games are starting to fade. I'm not sure. What was that in reference to, Hudson? Just the industry currently on a bit of a decline? In the meantime, Devish, sorry, can you please review mine? So if you want to get reviewed, like it's gonna take quite a while, but you can get your portfolio reviewed by going to our website and signing up for a portfolio review. Let me link it again. Fengzhu is great, especially if you wanna get more into the fundamentals. Fengzhu is awesome. I've watched all his design cinema stuff. Like it's so good. It also didn't really help that I was trying to become like a concept artist in the beginning, so that's where I got it from. But Fengzhu design is awesome. Yeah, about the industry, I kept on hearing that since 2022. That getting a job in the industry is tough. I feel like getting a job in this industry has always been tough though. Like, yeah, right now, like the market is shrinking, but also like the market was huge before. And I think if you look at like the broader spectrum, we're currently on like a little bit of a downtrend, but in I would say a couple of years, we're going to be bigger than we were before this downtrend. That's the way that I look at it, at least. Like, games are not going to go anywhere. Like, there's no way. We're just going to evolve, and we're just going to make games in a different way, right? It's still a giant market. It's still bigger than, like, monetary-wise. Like, it's still bigger than, what is it, like, music and films combined, right? There's no way that games are going to go anywhere. There's no way. We're also like a really new industry as well. Gotta keep that in mind too. But I want to say on the flip side, there's a lot of people that I know that have gotten jobs as juniors recently. There's always opportunity. And there's only one thing, well, there's mainly one thing that it comes down to, and it's the quality of the work. So sometimes you just have to put your head down, ignore all the fluff that's going on outside, take up a part-time role, right? Do something else in the meantime. Support yourself, put some food on the table, and do art on the side. It's going to take a little bit longer, yeah, but like you said, you got to eat. You got to do that too. Hitchum saying, do you currently accept submissions for portfolio reviews? Yeah, see the link down below. Oh, in your case, Hitchum, just put your portfolio in portfolio reviews channel on the Discord. Because then you're gonna skip the queue since you're a member. Hey, Peter Lynn. It's been a while since last time I was watching your streams. Oh shit, welcome back. You came back for like the medieval music, huh? The nostalgia is coming out now. But yeah, that was it, Sophie. Thank you so much for posting your work. I would say best of luck. I know that it's tough sometimes, but you just gotta keep grinding, you know? Keep putting stuff on there. Do it at a pace that works for you, but don't lose track of it. The consistency is key here. I got my first job in the industry this year. Yeah, congratulations, Mike. Mm-hmm. Oh no. Judgment Day has arrived for Coleman White. To be fair, it's not Judgment Day. You're already at a studio. Come on. I think at this time when you were posting it, it was you were still looking for a job, right? Yeah. So congratulations on getting a job. I just haven't updated it. Yeah. Oh wait, updated as in a way. Okay, cool. You're still at that job. That's awesome. Cool. So just some feedback on the regular. Let's have a look. Let's start out with the most recent thing now. This is from like 8 months ago. Not that like the timeline matters, right? But I try to something that I forgot to do with Sophie was that we started with the older work first, which was like 3 years ago, so becomes a little bit less relevant. But it's also on the portfolio, so. Let's have a look. Got some vertex painting set up. That's nice. A little bit of contrast like this does a lot. Like just having the contrast like this in your environment where you can just paint in like a little bit of like, oh, I want like a spot to be brighter here. So good. Some decals, got the GIF. Got the books on there as well. Yeah, this is good. I like it's nice, this presentation. I feel like you could just do this in like a GIF where you just like cut out like the main section, right? It's a nitpick, but hey. Oh. What is this one here for? It feels so random at the end. Is that something? That's not a video, right? No. That's interesting. I honestly don't know why this one is here. Oh, like a zoo. Oh, okay. This feels really random. I would honestly try to present more of your stuff in the center then, so that it becomes like the focus point of the scene, right? Because now it just feels like I'm looking at a screenshot that got accidentally posted, right? But the zoo stuff is good though. Like, I like that you want to showcase that. So keep that in mind. But honestly, like with this kind of a scene, like you have all the assets like right there in front of you. It's like easy to understand. I don't think you necessarily have to do a zoo. What I would be interested in though is if you have that sword, which is like the only unique, well, it's like the main focal point of the scene. I want to see how you approach that. Like that's what I would be curious for. Yeah, overall this is good. I like all the breakdowns. I like the vertex painting. I like the decals that you show them off as well. Decals are a little bit too subtle, but like it's cool that these are all like videos, right? It keeps you engaged. It keeps you like motivated to go through the thing. So yeah, this is a great presentation. Like it, you got your name like pushed into the corner. Like it's again a nitpick. Just move this up a little bit. Probably decrease like the opacity a little bit more, you know, so that it's pretty subtle. Hey, Sakamo! Like I was saying in the chat, like I used to work together with Sakamo. Yeah, cool little scene though. I think the presentation is on point. You have like the God Ray. It's pretty strong, but I kind of like that it's just like purely focused on this. So I it kind of acts as like a diagonal coming in, right? So that's kind of doing like a really good job. There is oh, let me actually see. We're gonna go nitpick mode again. Is the normal map inverted on this one? Kind of feels like it. There's something weird going on with the normal. Again, barely noticeable, but hey. Maybe that's a tessellation or something? I don't know if you use tessellation on it. Because it looks fine here. And I assume it might be a variation. But yeah. So funny, the god is... the god ray is separate, pointing towards the screen. Oh, yeah, it's pointing towards the screen. Yeah, but like, it's more about like the feeling that you get from it, right? Like it almost looks like it's hitting that, right? I think it's highlighting like the diagonal composition that's going on, right? Whatever you did, it works well. Cool little presentation. You can definitely like level up like how things are integrated within each other, right? So for example, how is this wood integrated within the stonework? The wood itself feels pretty basic, but honestly, like this is a good example of it feels okay, right? But like the lighting pushes it up to the next level, where like the lighting can make or break a piece, and I think it's elevating this piece to the next level, right? So yeah, it's looking good. I like the little shots that you have going on, little spider webs, like the cobwebs. Yeah, I think in this scene you can see it a lot, where like the wood, it's used in like a very particular way, right? Where you can notice that it's like a tileable, or that it's pretty basic in the way that it's used currently. Where you would probably expect like a little bit more of like an ornamental edge on like the what is it, the built-in wardrobe, or like the bookcase in this case, because you have like those ornamental pieces over here too. Yeah, overall pretty good piece. I like it. It's from last year. My peers and classmates, Jeremy as well. So I'm assuming that this is think tank again, right? Yeah, this is cool. I think this is where you can see the difference between your mentality around game art, right? And how you present like something that is game art. Because this is just like, oh, these are pretty pictures. But we're not really seeing like anything else coming on top of it, right? We're not getting like the juicy stuff behind it, and like the well planned out like presentations and what you're trying to show off and how you're showing it off. That is kind of like missing from this entry here in comparison to the other one, right? But there's not too much that we can really say on this one. Well, portfolio-wise, right? Final room. Kindergarten room. I also didn't change the glass. It's a default block out texture. Glass. Oh. Yeah. It's barely noticeable though, gotta be honest. I thought it was just open, right? Because like the back of it. Mm-mm. Thank you, Giacomo. Da-da-da. Let's see, we got a prop here. Yeah, this is it. Like I'm missing like a lot of context here, right? Um like I don't know. I mean, this is like I'm assuming like how to low poly baked, but I'm not seeing any textures. I don't know what the poly count is. So I have no context rather than like, oh, it looks visually interesting, right? So I'm missing like a whole bunch of like game art stuff, which is why I can't really say too much about it. Like especially on like a portfolio perspective, right? Like there's definitely stuff that I could say on like the art side where it's like I would probably want to see like more transitions from like the floor to the walls, because you would probably see like way more transitions there. Um let's see. Yeah, more variation in like the wall textures as well, because right now you just have like the white and the paint, but like you want to have like more variations into both of those layers too, and you want to have like, I don't know, additional decals and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this could be taken to like the next level if you wanted to. After working somewhat at Grassroots, I realized how helpful wireframes in some maps are. Oh yeah, yeah. That is honestly what game art is about, right? Like, first, we kind of want to see that you're a good artist, right? You kind of have to see that as like the gateway into. Let's imagine like I'm a recruitment manager, right? I'm on the lookout for some hip new junior to join our studio. The way that I'm going to be looking at things is, and let's imagine that I'm on ArtStation and I'm browsing stuff, right? I can filter out the juniors, whatever. I will look for good art first. And that basically comes down to like how you present your stuff, how impactful the thumbnails are, how good your lighting is, like basically how you sell your work, right? And then if that checkbox is checked, then I can go into like, oh, okay, so um, how does this person like actually do the game art side of things and the more technical stuff behind it, right? Do they know like how to manage like topology, or do they know how to bake from high to low poly, or do they know about trim sheets or titleable textures and how to use them? um yeah, so that's all like context that we don't have here, apart from the last scene, right? The last scene you made up for like the lack of not showing that context in your previous scenes. There's still some stuff missing here, right? Like I said before, like I kind of want to see like a high to low poly like broken down, because in your portfolio, I was kind of hoping that the skateboard would have that, but it doesn't have that either. So I'm kind of missing like, okay, I kind of know that you want to do environments, right? Like that seems pretty clear. Makes sense. You're showcasing that you can do them competently as well. But I still want to know how flexible you are with like making a unique prop as well. To be honest, my bar has changed from creating great environment shots to making a scene that that I want to play in the game. If I can do that, then I've done my job. Yeah. I mean, those two go hand in hand though. Like a great composition is basically like the fundamental work that you have to do to get a good looking scene that people want to play, right? Like the way that I look at composition is that it's not only like for art purposes, but it's also for player leading, right? So what we have to do, depending on what kind of game you're working on, is we have to be able to use all the levers that we have from like an artistic perspective to drive a player to certain regions or certain like gameplay things, right? Keeping it very vague, but like there's so much stuff, like so many conditions that you you could want a person to like go somewhere, right? Let's say you have like a specific mechanic, you want to guide them there, like we can use those things. But those constraints are going to be completely different for like let's say a competitive shooter, right? Like the art needs to be more about like functionality rather than being cool, right? That's why you oftentimes see like the maps in Valorant, they look like nice and clean because it's all about like how the player will understand and read those surfaces for gameplay purposes, right? And then art. But yeah. Peanut is saying, I'm curious. You said subscriber can skip a queue. I have a subscription, but I'm still pretty far up the list on Discord. But I do understand when you only have time for a couple each session. Yeah, there's only like a couple that I can do each session. We usually stick to like 3 or 4. Yeah, we'll see. That's like the current limit. And it seems to be that is like the consistent rate that people are flooding in as well. So, yeah. So, yeah, in short, Cole, I really like this project. I think this project like ticks a lot of boxes. There's only like the missing hero prop, right? That I really want to see. Because it is there. I'm just wondering how you made this, right? Like, and you did like all the rest like beautifully. There's still improvements that can be done, of course, but I kind of want to see how you approach like prop as well, right? So recap number 1 is showcase game art, right? Showcase those breakdowns. Let us know how you approach things. Let us know how you optimize your UVs, like how you use like your topology, all that kind of stuff. I want to see that. Number 2, let's have a look. So the thumbnails are pretty good. This one is by far the best thumbnail, right? I like it. You don't really need to add like the Unreal Engine logo. I feel like that's like super outdated at this point. It's a minor nitpick. But let's have a look. So number 2 is, let's see. I think honestly the biggest one is just like the game art one, right? Yeah, what I want to see is unique assets, right? And that's more in terms of like how flexible you are as an artist. And basically this comes down to flexible means versatile in like a production environment, right? So that can only be to your benefit because you got like a really solid base of environments, but that could be like really nice. I think honestly, making one unique asset and then doing whatever you want to do again, right? Yeah, and then just doubling down on what you want to do. Let's see. The vert count for the skateboard is around 2k. Yeah. It depends on how those vertices are used though. It's always a thing, right? And without any context, like it's hard to tell. Yeah. I would honestly say do a unique asset. Get rid of this guy. And then unless you're looking for something in the near future, right? That's your portfolio from now on. And then have that unique asset on there, and then potentially just add whatever you want to do, right? Like more environment art stuff, and also more storytelling. You're diving into storytelling here. I think you can dive into that a little bit more, and also storytelling and logic, right? Because now there is a sword in the library, and it's like why is the sword there? It doesn't really feel like a normal place for a sword, right? And also the logic as in like the stuff that we discussed where like a bookcase is built into like a stone wall, but then the bookcase kind of feels like pretty basic, right? So just like the logic of like how would a space be built up and what would a normal like library look like? Because you could probably have made some like really interesting choices to further emphasize um the sword that you have, right? And maybe make it into like a pedestal of like, oh, this is like, I don't know, like a freaking hero that was walking around on the earth at a certain point, and now this is just like a chamber of knowledge, right? Where like the sword is being kept or something like just something to give us more to bite onto. Um saying, wait, I'm confused. So unique asset like more breakdowns for skateboard? So you could do a breakdown for the skateboard. How old is that? Have a look. Last year. Yeah, you could do like more breakdowns for the skateboard as well. You basically have two options, right? So more breakdowns. Or if you can do better at this point already, do another one, right? And then apply those breakdowns onto that new one as well. I'm just saying this from like a perspective that I never really liked going back to older projects. So once something was done, I was just moving forward. I would never really go back necessarily, unless it was like really quick. So that's up to you. You have two choices there, in my opinion. But yeah, if you do like another one, like just keep the skateboard on there until like the new one is added to your portfolio. But yeah. Thanks, Cole. Good looking stuff, man. A good portfolio. I really like the trajectory of your work, right? Where you're refining your tastes, you're building up like skill sets, you're diving more into like denser portfolio pieces where you can really see that you're trying to like infuse a little bit of story, a little bit of complexity into it. So keep pushing that. Keep thinking about like how to make things like more unique, right? For example, the books on the banner. You can easily like switch those up, scale them down, up and down. Have like a slight tint in the material. All that kind of stuff makes like a huge difference, right? Like the better you get at your skills, the more important the details are going to become, right? Because that's what we're going to look for. So, yeah, like those tiny details, like the books, the book variations, the texturing, especially, where I want to see more depth in the textures as well, and then more storytelling would be cool. Some people have said more level oriented or composition is where I'm a little bit better at. So this is the thing, like it doesn't matter what you're showing off right now, it's what you want to do as a person that is more important, right? Because for example, I did foliage for a long time because the company needed it and I was the only person that did it. But I didn't like foliage. So, you know, it's good that you have like different opinions from people, but yeah. Do what you want to do. And that is undoubtedly going to change over time. So, yeah. Get used to that as well. Be flexible with yourself. Yeah, you can think about it in a way where like the composition and stuff is always going to be important, right? Because composition is one of those like fundamental things where you can apply that to like anything. Same with storytelling too. Like you can do storytelling on a single prop, but you can do storytelling on like a world basis as well, right? Yeah, no worries, Cole. There was a question from Killshot3D. I have a question. Do you recommend going back to improve old projects? Should I focus on creating new ones to showcase my new skills and experiences? I personally would always go forward. I never never really liked going back to old things. It was like, okay, that is old. That was like a former me. I'm just gonna focus on like new me, right? And just keep on moving forward. And then from like a portfolio perspective, like the more you move forward, like the more stuff that you can remove. And you can, or you can just like put that in an old work folder and have it as a comparison, right? Bartolomic. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say Bart for now, right? I hope you don't mind. Currently a lead artist at Game Factory. Okay, a lead artist at Game Factory. What are you doing here? Why are we asking for feedback on the portfolio? Let's have a look. So, after 8+ years working in mobile games, I want to do some good portfolio that is focused only on environment art to get a job as an environment artist in a AAA game studio. I hope that I will get some helpful feedback here. Okay, cool. Let's have a look. So first of all, the transition from like a smaller studio to a bigger studio is always interesting. I was actually talking to like one of my mentees like a couple months ago who's trying to do the same thing as well. Pretty interesting conversations to be had there. I had a look at all of this stuff before a little bit as well. And one thing, maybe let's just take it from the top, right? Let's have a look at the about page first. So 8 years of 2D and 3D artist. Softwares. Cool. One thing that I missed is your projects. Like I can't really see too much from your projects apart from. Is this 2? Okay, so you got Cookie Jam and Panda Pop backgrounds. Okay. So you got these two here. Like really nice as well. Some really cool 2D stuff here. Yeah, there's a lot of them as well. That's cool. I think there were like a couple of other projects where you probably worked on as well. And I would be really curious to see them on your portfolio too. So that was the first thing that I came to. I was like, oh, I feel like I'm missing like a couple of projects according to your LinkedIn page, right? There might be NDA stuff in there. Who knows? But that would be cool to see. There was an interesting project in between there, like Hearthstone, which from your LinkedIn page you're still working on. So that could be a cool one to show off. Kind of acting as like a bridge between like the indie and AAA studio. Yeah, that was like the first thing that I just stumbled on is that, yeah, maybe not too many professional projects on here. I would potentially also make the logo for these bigger, which is an interesting thing because normally I say like make the logo smaller, right? But if you're trying to call out that this is like professional work, I would honestly make the logos bigger so that they're like a little bit more recognizable as professional work. Because you can, I mean, it's hidden by my little Epic Pen thing too, but you can barely see that there is a logo on it. So I would actually just go in here and just make it roughly this size or something. Yeah, something like that. That could be helpful. So that was like the first part, right? Where I was kind of missing like some professional work to a certain degree. Maybe, again, that's like NDA. We can kind of overlook that. And then maybe increasing the logos as well. The other interesting thing is that all this stuff is just for one project. Which I feel that is like an attempt to just pad out your portfolio, which is a thing that I don't like. The stuff here looks good, right? Don't get me wrong. I like the stuff that's on display, but I just don't like that it feels like it's like really stretched out to like the max to just like pad your portfolio as much as possible. Because Here's the thing, right? Like whenever you're making an environment, especially because you want to transition from like an indie studio to like a triple A studio, the bar is way higher as well. So imagine that like all these materials, they need to be as realistic as they can be. Right? Because you're showing them off as like individual materials. So I'm expecting this one to look like a Megascan like material would look, as close as it can to that, right? Because you are treating them as like fully standalone things, and I don't think they're there yet. They need to be pushed to like that next level where you could almost see that they're like very realistic in terms of like um their their surfacing and the roughness maps and all that kind of stuff. Because you can see here, like if we look at like the highlight, it's pretty uniform in the way that the roughness kind of gets treated, right? We can kind of see some interesting stuff happening here, but it doesn't feel like it has all that love and that passion poured into this singular asset, right? And the reason why I say that is a scrutiny that you put yourself under when you have like all these individual materials as separate things. And that's not to take away from like the presentation, right? Presentation is really nice, really clean. You know what you're doing on the presentation side. So yeah, I don't think we're going to spend too much time talking about that specifically. But it's just when it comes to like the very simple materials, I'm asking the question of like, is this the best material that you have? Especially comparing it to, I don't know, let's say the moss, right? Maybe not this screenshot, but yeah, the moss looks really interesting and it has like a certain complexity to it. I think the way that I would probably split this up is saying like, okay, let's say monkey shrine materials, right? And just have like all the materials under there as like a separate thing, and then do the same thing for your asset work or your sculpt work or something like that, so that you still have like a chunky portfolio, but you're not trying to pad it out like to the maximum, right? I like the way that you kind of presented this, where you could probably do something in the same kind of vein, right? Where it's a little bit more condensed and more focused on, again, just like trying to bring out the stuff that's like worth showing. Like this stuff is awesome. These are all like really well done. Yeah, this one makes sense. You got like the sculpts here as well. The sculpts, like initial impression was that they're like really blobby and like really low res, right? Like almost not enough resolution to kind of warrant, because keep in mind that these trees, where's the comparison? These trees are huge, right? So if I then imagine like this tree and you're like next to it as like a little guy over here, my pen. So this little guy standing next to this tree, you are gonna see like how blurry that texture is. Obviously, like it doesn't come down to like the bake by itself, right? You're gonna use detail maps and all that kind of stuff too. But I was expecting just like a little bit more crisp of a base sculpt there. These are cool. Yeah, the quality is really nice though. Just a little spotlight on the face, really well done. Again, this is something where we can kind of see like how blurry something is, right? Especially because this is again like a big asset, and we have such like a nice face over here. But then if you start looking like a little bit further, like you can see where like the seams are, like the seams as in like where the faults of the asset are, right? Well, like this is like a textile density issue. That's important to keep in mind. Let's have a look at the rocks as well. Peter Lynn is saying, I felt like I always wanted to adjust my old works, but once I open it, I just felt more frustrated. I think that's also because you're looking at a version of your past self that knew that it was time to move on. And I don't know, like, I'll speak for myself, but there's like a lot of quick decision making that happens, especially because in my older projects, I didn't care about naming conventions. I didn't care about like good file organization. I didn't care about like a lot of things that would like really speed up my life and like really speed up my workflow that I do care about now. But going back to it, it's like opening Pandora's box, as in like, oh my god, what is this mess? Real cool surfaces here. Again, I think you can do like way more with the roughness here. It feels like very, very samey in the sort of values, right? But I do like the overall approach. Look really good. Again, like I don't really have anything to say about like the presentation. I think the presentation is on point, right? You know how to present your work, you know how to present the assets inside of them. I think the only thing that I kind of feel like is just a lot of it is padded, where like the more that you go down, like this, I'm like, it just should that be like a separate thing, right? Like that's where we're getting to, because you're literally putting everything on display. And it's fine to just like leave out certain bits and just say like, hey, these are the materials that I'm the most proud of. Have them in like a little material folder. Right? So let's say the same thing that you're doing here. Let's say you just have like a material folder. Ding, ding. Like your little materials here. And then you just put like all the cool stuff in here and get rid of like all the individual things, right? And only pick the cool ones. It's like show your best stuff, right? Let's actually have a look at the scene. We haven't done that yet. It's cool, very cinematic with the opening title. The camera work is cool as well. That's a cool shot. I like that. The way that that shot is layered. With like the entire atmosphere is really well done. This is a really cool shot. It's almost a shame that that shot is not depicted like anywhere else. It just has like a nice build up. It has like, you can see the destination and you can see the pathway. Like everything is so like clearly like landmarked, right? It reads very well, this shot. All the little bits of like the water are really well done as well. Yeah. Really cool stuff. Some of the moss is like really noticeably like uniform, right? Like all the cards kind of have the same. That's a cool shot to finish out on. That's cool. Oh, that's a shame. But there's still some more as well. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, really impressive environment. Yeah, exactly. It is really impressive. You have this shot here, which is cool. Like you leave them with like a little bit of mystery. You have like the color contrast hinting at like, oh, there's some bad shit going on here. Feels like Black Myth Wukong. Yeah. It's really nice. Yeah, I like that. The transition at the end is a little bit sudden as well. I mean, I'm really nitpicking here, right? Like my favorite shots are like the opening. Then this shot is like by far my favorite. Like this little shot. This shot is so good. And then you have like the build up here where you see like the end of it. Which is cool. You have like the vista. The vista, right? And then you have this shot here. I think if you wanted to optimize this, I would almost treat it as like you are playing a level, right? So let's say there's like an important point here where you have to pick something up. Cool. You have some side story stuff. Like no one's gonna watch this. It is cool, it is there, but it's a side thing, right? So we're just walking past this. We're walking past this as well. This is just decoration on the side, right? And then you can like linger on like the stuff that is really important to you, right? Like some of the beautiful shots. Again, it's coming down to like the same principle, right? Where you kind of want to indicate that you know what works the best in this environment. And what I feel like you're doing now is you're highlighting everything where you like set up like a bunch of like specific elements, right? But that's not necessarily what makes a thing like makes an environment like really interesting. You kind of have to balance between like the big key moments and then also just like the stuff that just like is filler, but you're just gonna walk past it, right? It's more like a thing that if you really are interested, you can explore. So I would honestly say that the pacing of that, I would love to see it more akin to it, so that we're just like we're walking through here, we're catching a glimpse to the left, but we're just keeping on walking. And then you have like a big moment like here where you're like you have the reveal. Awesome. Linger a little bit, and then you just have like, okay, we're gonna keep the flow going, and then you just have like the big moment, right? Like a little bit of like moving up, slowing down. The reason why I bring that up is again, like we're gonna see that in the screenshots as well. This is something that I had a look at before because I was really intrigued by this environment. Is that you're trying to showcase everything. But there are just certain shots that are not as valuable as like other shots. So this is a case where like we're halfway now, right? You have to decide like as an artist, and you gotta tell me like, hey, I think this is the best shot. There's like a bunch of other shots, I know that, but I'm gonna focus on the things that are like most worth looking at, right? Or maybe find like a different way of presenting them, right? Say, hey, here are my what I kind of like in certain cases. I'll do a quick draft of it. Is where people make like a full environment and they're like, okay, this is the main shot, this is all like the main stuff, this is like the video, and then they have like some additional stuff, and then like a banner in between, and they say like, oh, detail shots. Right? And then maybe they have like a collage of like multiple shots underneath it. But with like a clear transition built in as like an image dictating like, oh, these are the main ones. Now we're going to detail shots, right? And then you could combine like all these images into like maybe 2 to 3 images instead of like, I don't know, like 8 to 12. Right? We're trying to condense that. And then maybe what you could do, showcase some of like, again, the breakdown stuff, right? Some of like the things that you did behind it, and give us like the juicy bits behind it in one single post. Or break down like the most important things. And then link to like another one, right? But I do want to see like breakdowns and more stuff in here personally, so that we have like a full post that kind of has like, oh, you have the big cinematic stuff, and then it kind of goes into like breakdowns, like a more condensed post that I can consume like all of it, rather than it feeling like pretty unfocused, right? Because that's, in general, that's kind of like the feeling that I'm getting here at this point. It's not necessarily that like the art is fucking stunning, right? There's no denying that. The presentation is on point, like you know what you're doing, like all that is fine. It's just there's something here by like padding it out by such a big margin that I get the feeling that you don't know what is good to present. Even though that feels like really weird to say out loud, because you do showcase that you know what you want to present. It's just, yeah, being more focused on what you want to present. Yeah. Like I said, all the rest of it looks really good. And I think this honestly is going to be like a pretty short one, because there's not too much more that I can say, but that's just like the general feeling that I get, because the way that you present your work, the way that you do your thumbnails, the way that everything is organized, the consistency, like all of that is in like a really good place, right? Really good place. The only thing that I can say is just that I want to see you pick what is best. And that you show focus, right? That's like my main takeaway. Oh, and I just realized that it's behind the entire thing. Yeah. Do that again. Terrell is saying be your own art director. Yeah. Yeah, especially because you have that experience, right? Like, Bart, you have the experience of being like an art lead. I mean, maybe not art director, depending on, but you're working like an indie studio, so I'm guessing that it's going to be like somewhat the same. So you have that experience, just utilize it on your own portfolio as well. Yeah. I think honestly, like, yeah, the presentation and all that stuff is on point. I think if we really wanted to like improve this, right, is you gotta pay attention to the details more. With details, I literally mean like the moss cards, right? They're all uniformly spread. I want to see some more variation in that. I want to see like more natural clumping. Probably like the materials can be improved, especially the moss. The way that it transitions, the way that it blends, it kind of feels really harsh at the moment. But it seems to be like in line with like the colors of your foliage as well. So there's that could be said for it. The composition was really nice. Not really too much to say about that. And then the roughness maps, right? I think that's the thing that we discussed the most, was that currently they're not utilized to the fullest. Where you could potentially like utilize them like way more to bring out like certain areas with like higher contrast compared to what it is now. But that could also be like a deliberate thing again. Yeah. Not too much from my side, Bart. I would say thank you so much for showing it off, though. Like, this was really interesting to see. Especially because we have like an equivalent amount of like years in the industry as well. So, yeah. Really like the work though. Gotta say. Big fan of it. especially like the project itself. Some really beautiful shots in there. I'll say it again. Wait, let me actually look. Is that shot in here? Yeah. This shot. Probably my favorite shot. That's the thing. Like when you get to this level, like it becomes really hard to just pick what you want to show off, right? Because you spend so much time on like these individual things. Yeah. Cool stuff, Bart. Thank you so much for showing it off. I would say, yeah, best of luck in transitioning to AAA. Wish you the best of luck, man. Maybe at this point you might have already gotten one, but not too sure. Okay, and then last one for today. Cole is saying the diamond in the rough. This is a great shot. An obstacle in the way possibly with the pathway to the destination. Yeah, I feel like where like the road kind of disappeared right behind the curve, like just slightly. I kind of like that, you know, very clear like signposting and like player leading, but man, there's something about it, just like beautifully presented. That's where it gets to like, I don't know how to explain it. Like you just feel it, you know. You look at that image and it's like, yeah, this is really nice. Like I get that, like just like I don't know, like brain rush where it's like, oh my god, this is such a nice piece, and then you just after that becomes like you start like analyzing things, right? But yeah, it usually starts with just like, oh my god, this is so beautiful. It doesn't happen too often, but yeah, it is really nice when it clicks. Where do we need to post to my portfolio for you to make a review? So we have a link for that, but we're currently working through the catalog of people from our community as well. So if you want to skip the queue, I would recommend you to become a member as well. And there's like a bunch of other benefits too, by the way. It was always worth it, in my humble opinion. Cool. Okay, next up we go to Anton. Anton is a 3D artist with 3 years of experience in creating AR apps, game-ready props, and tiling textures for environments. Awesome. Available for freelance. A 3D props and material artist. Cool. Initial impression is okay. It is okay. We got like a nice variation going on in terms of like the actual projects on display, right? It's pretty cool. You got like a graphical approach with this shoe, which is not continued in any of the other pieces, which may have a reason. We're going to dive into that in a little bit. Yeah. So I would say you got like one prop in here. I'm assuming that this is going to be not like game related. This might be product visualization or something like that, because it looks like really dense geometry wise, but we'll see. And this one looks really cool as well. I like the way that the dust is already presented. The thing that I don't like about this thumbnail, and you're probably gonna see this coming, is just like a third of the thumbnail is just, oh god, well, a third of the thumbnail is taken up by logos, and the second, the other part is just taken up by my chat at the moment. So yeah. No, but like, if I zoom it out this way, you can kind of see what I mean. That is just, you got like 1/3 that's just like mostly like logos, which you don't need. I would honestly rather see like a zoomed in shot of like this area here where you show off like the nice sort of like details of the prop, right? Rather than just filling it with like a bunch of like logos. And the same can probably be applied to like some of the other stuff as well, where this logo doesn't need to be there. maybe what we could do here is, because this is this palm tree? Yeah, palm tree material. Just have like an HDRI of like, I don't know, a Californian beach or something like that in the back, right? So like a background. Just filling up like this space instead of a logo. Just sell the idea to me, right? Like, even if it's just for the thumbnail, which is like, it's a 5-minute job, right? You just take like a photo from like a Californian beach, you blur it a little bit, you mask out like the palm tree in this like thumbnail, and you're done. But you wanna sell the idea, right? You wanna sell the story behind it. And then this one is weird. I'd be curious to see what's actually in it, but like it kind of feels just weird the way that it's cropped at the moment. I'm not too sure. We're gonna have a look in a bit. And then I'm assuming that what we said here is selling the idea, right? Or selling the story behind it. That can just be added here as well. I'm assuming. Because it is like a thing based on Alien, right? So it would be cool that we just have it on like some sort of surface that you would recognize from being from like an Alien movie, right? Okay, so this is it about the thumbnails. I think we can see, we're gonna see if we can do like some improvements here. I'm gonna start out with this guy. Posted last year. Yeah, like for example, a thumbnail here that could be really interesting is just like cropping it in such a way. Oh god. Cropping it in such a way that you get like a nice taste of the whole thing. Right? So you're kind of showing off like the juicy stuff, and it makes you want to click the thumbnail. So that could be cool. I like the way that you approach the dust, especially because it kind of has that feel that like people have been turning the dials and stuff. Looks cool. The wood grain is following the direction. That's always nice to see. Okay, we got a breakdown here. It's cool. This stuff is really dense here on the sides. Like where you can't really see the wireframe anymore. Like that's where it gets like kind of crazy. You can probably optimize this a lot. Let's see. Created a low poly and high poly version in Blender. Baked the maps in Marmoset Toolbag. Okay. Mesh info. It is dense. You can easily like cut out like a lot of that topology if you wanted to. Really good ref as well. So the thing that I'm questioning here, the question that I have in my mind right now is you have like a lot of bevels and like a lot of topology to support the actual edges of this model, but you are baking from like a high to low poly, right? So there's two options. There's two options really what could be happening here, or like the options that come to mind is that you're quite unsure on how baking works, and like maybe this is like your first time baking, which is a fucking nightmare, so I can understand. Or you were trying to compensate for something that was happening in the bake, which could also lead to like some knowledge missing, right? I know that we're like really up close to the object itself as well, but like honestly, like the amount of topology that you put on the bevels, like if we were to open that here, we zoom in a little bit, like you have like a panel that like oh, okay, so there's like a lip there as well, but you still have like quite a lot of bevel going on here for like your high to low poly, right? So you can definitely optimize that as well. And then also where you have like these kind of sections where you have a lot of topology, try to find ways on how to end that topology in like a way that makes sense. So for example, like all this topology, right? Like all this stuff goes all the way around like the mesh, but doesn't contribute anything to the actual silhouette. Oh, sorry, my chat is in front of it again. So yeah, maybe let's do it this way then. Hopefully that works. So yeah, you can see that you have like a lot of geometry here, but it doesn't actually contribute anything to like the shape of the mesh. So what we try to do with that, and I can kind of, I'm not sure if that is what is happening here. Like I can see you like merging stuff, but you have to be like a little bit more brutal here, where you just say like, okay, like all of this stuff is just going to be merged until this corner, right? So like all of that stuff and all that stuff is going to go here. And then you can cut out like basically all this geo that goes like all the way around like the whole thing. And that's going to save you like a ton on your topology. Basically do that for everything that whenever it doesn't contribute to your actual silhouette, there's a large, there could be like a large moment or like that's a good indicator, let's say, that you can just like remove it. Yeah, definitely room for optimization there for sure. But it is good that you show it off, right? Like this is something that we can both learn from as well. Or like that everyone can learn from, in terms of like, if you put it on here, we can kind of talk about it in a more direct way and I can give you like pointers for the next project. Same with these guys, right? Like that's probably the area that's gonna eat like a lot of your topology. I would see if you can reduce that from like, I don't know, like let's say, I don't know how many sides these are. Let's say 16 to 12. Make like a 12-sided cylinder instead of a 16-sided cylinder. Right? But if you apply that to one, and then just like, I don't know what you're using Blender, right? Like it's really easy. You can just like separate one of these guys, do all the optimizations, split off like all the other ones, and just link like the model data to this one. And then you only have to do it once. So it's really, really simple. Yeah, there's a lot of optimization that can happen here. Overall, a very clean presentation. I would honestly swap these two, so that you have your main shot first, with like the floorboards and all that kind of stuff, and then have like a turntable. Maybe even think about the turntable also doing it with like the floorboards underneath it, so that you keep like a little bit of consistency there. And then use these cleaner renders for like, I don't know, whenever you want to do detail shots or breakdowns. Model was created in 3 days. Yeah. In this case, I don't mind. I don't mind that you say in 3 days. It feels good. Feels nice, especially the texturing of like the top part, which is like the most interesting thing. Yeah. References here as well. This is a good post. I like it. I like it. My main goal was to practice creating a stylized scene. Okay. Small props in the scene are combined into 2 texture atlases. The columns, mass, boxes, and doors have a unique texture. Thank you for watching. Yeah, it's a cool little introduction to do like a stylized project. It's honestly pretty basic, right? In terms of like the setup and the texturing and all that kind of stuff. It feels more like an exploration, which there's nothing bad with it, right? It's but it's definitely in terms of um hey, have a great evening, Peanut. It's definitely like in terms of like texturing and the amount of detail that you have put into this single prop. Like it's definitely taken a hit over here where it feels like more simplified and we're not using that same amount of like attention to detail in this environment, right? It can also have to do with like stepping it up, right? Because we're going from like a small asset to like an environment, which brings like a whole bunch of like issues with it as well. But yeah. Let's have a look here. So we got a palm tree. Professional example. I like that. This is an interesting one. I feel this is almost like more of a tutorial rather than anything else. Because you're really breaking down like all the individual steps, right? Or like most of the individual steps. It's cool. I think the main thing that I can say here is just something that I talk about a lot these days is context. And that's basically what I was saying before with like the beach example, right? Is that I want to see how is it used and like put it in its environment, right? Like give me some context of where it's used. Again, simple mask, like put it in the background somewhere, right? Like it elevates like how this piece is going to be used. I'm not sure if like the other people are doing the same thing. Let's just have a look. Yeah, see? This adds so much. And it's like really simple to do, right? But like just seeing it in like a background that kind of makes sense, like the blue sky in the background, you know? It adds so much. It elevates it in terms of like presentation. Like some of these shots are cool. Like these are like quite nice, you know, just like they're juicy little shots. But I think what makes it like really stand out is doing this sort of stuff. That is always like really nice. Yeah. And I think, yeah, talking a bit about like the art side of things, right, is that you can definitely elevate especially the base color map, right? Especially if you look at like Sebastian Zapata's work. Right? Like look at the complexity that is going on in terms of like the base color compared to what you currently have, right? There's a lot of really interesting layers going on. I don't know if you were a part of the workshop that we had this weekend, but that kind of dove into like a whole bunch of those things as well. It was really interesting. We'll have that recording up in like a week and a half or something. See, and then you said the hiking boots project was for AR, but I decided to show it on my portfolio as well. Textured in 4K, made a render in Marmoset. 70 pixels per centimeter. Yeah. This is an interesting one. Like I feel This could be one of those projects where you could reuse this and just add like a new texture layer on top of it and really make it feel like this is like worn and grungy like you would see in a game. And I think that could be really interesting. But like right now, in like its very clean state, it's more for like a company that does product visualization rather than for a games company, right? So I feel like it doesn't really have like a lot of value. Yeah, you can kind of see that you can model like complex shapes, right? And that you know your way around like interlinking like a bunch of shapes. But I feel like if you really wanted to make this like game art ready, maybe not game art ready, but game art appropriate, like just doing like another texture pass on it, that could be really interesting. Otherwise, it's something that you could show as like, hey, I can also do more augmented reality, right? And I can do more like product visualization. As that boot is starting, they should swap textures with the mud. Yeah, that could be an interesting idea. To have like multiple variations where you do like, oh, this is a clean like product version and this is the game version, you know? A heat tracker. Oh, I thought this was like an alien tracker before. The high pulling and ZBrush. That's cool. So we're missing the breakdowns here, right? So what we're missing is I want to see. Oh well, you had like a Marmoset viewer, right? I'll explain why I don't like that in a little bit. So what I want to see is a poly count visually, right? Ideally, poly count, UVs, and textures. That's what I want to see here. The reason why I want to see these is because then I can like quickly visually see and compare the two, right? The reason why I bring that up as in like a visual way is that yes, you have like a Marmoset viewer, but it takes a long time to get there, right? The way that I always look at it is the more clicks, and this is like a very like internet way to look at things, right? The more clicks and the more wait time you put in the way of like you and a recruiter is like the more potential points of just like people not even clicking on it in the first place, right? There have been a lots of points in when I was like still involved with recruitment where I just didn't click on like the Marmoset viewer because it's just you have to click on it and then like go to the buttons, and it's just like if you're doing that for like let's say 50 like portfolios a day, like you're gonna get to like skipping that step like really quickly. If I'm reviewing portfolios, I don't look at viewers. Yeah, I kind of feel like I don't do the same thing. Like, there needs to be a good reason for me to do so, right? Like if I'm really curious, and that's mostly from like a good side, right? If they're like, oh my god, like this is so amazing, like I kind of want to see how they built it. Yeah. Let's see. I wrote a poly count in the description. Is it a good way to show it? Not necessarily, because like again, the description is like hidden behind like another click again, right? It is good that you have it, right? So, but it's like another point of failure potentially, if you know what I mean, right? It's like I have to click it again rather than the natural flow of ArtStation is like I'll click on this and then I'm just scrolling. That's all I'm doing. And then if I look at what I see here and I'm like, oh, there's like stuff missing, then I'll like show more and I'm like, oh, okay, stuff is in here. But it's better that it's like visually, right? You want to make things as visual as possible and as easy as possible. Deputy Chief is an art lead. There needs to be a breakdown, and it should be demonstrated in the best light with a bit of extra flair. Yeah. You gotta sell it, right? Hey, Joe. Glad to have you here. Yeah, that's why in the beginning, remember when we mentioned that it would be cool to have it like on a table or something like that, right? That's like a good way of like elevating it to like the next level, because you can then just use that in your breakdowns as well, right? Have it as like a little bit of a consistency between like all the other things. Because yeah, you got the high poly here. And then I guess you got like all the stuff in here, but yeah. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Did you do that on this one? Let's see. Yeah. Like, this stuff is good, right? Informationally, like, this is going in the right direction. However, the issue with this is that it's, again, just like, oh, I took a screenshot or I took the file and I composed it into like 4, but I didn't really think about the presentation, right? That is something that like Deputy Chief is hinting at too, right? Where you can show so much of like artistic intent and care about your work by just taking a little bit of extra time of just like presenting it in a consistent manner, right? Like the template that I always give the recommendation about is, again, remember when we talked about the context throughout this entire like portfolio review? That's going to be important here too. So what I would usually do is, or what I would recommend, and you can play around with this template if you want to, right? Is like, let's say this section is going to be context. What that means is that I'm looking at like the 3D view of your object, right? So let's do another breakdown here. So you've got like your little boxy thing over here, and then maybe you can show it from like the back as well, right? So this gives us the context of like your object in 3D. And then we can kind of split this up however we want, right? So what do we need? We need poly count, textures, and UVs, right? That's the stuff we needed. So we can kind of see poly count. We probably want to do like a little bit of a wireframe over here. We can say poly count this much, blah, blah, blah. And then you have like your, let's say your UV over here. And again, you can organize these however you want, right? And then you can do your textures over here, right? So in this case, we're doing textures, we're doing UV, and then we're doing like poly count over here. But then what that means is that like all that I have here is all in like one nice little format for me to just like kind of digest and compare, because what we oftentimes do is once we're going through like people's work is that I kind of want to see like, oh, okay, so we have like this section over here. Where is that on the model? And the way that is happening right now is like, okay, I have this section. Kind of looks like, wait, where is it? You see, and now I need to like look through like another image to get like the context of what I'm looking for, right? Again, you kind of want to make it as easy as possible for people to like see how you did your work and like make it like really user friendly, if you want to use that terminology, right? You want to make it as simple as possible. And that can then also be applied to like a lot of these pieces, right? Can I drop mine to review? No, I'll send you a link though. So I have the link. People that are community members, so if you're a part of our Discord community, for which you can sign up on our website, they get to skip the queue as well. Because there is, unfortunately, like a sizable queue at the moment. Yeah. So overall, I think this is pretty good, right? And I think you're trying to experiment with like the close-up shots. You're showing off like certain skills, trying to decide like what to put in like 3D and what to bake down. Like, yeah, you're making some interesting choices here. Sometimes you have to watch out with how blurry like some of the effects can look, right? Because this gets like into blurry territory where you're like, doesn't feel like it's the right resolution. Yeah. Let's do a little recap to round this off then. So, first of all, you can definitely optimize your thumbnails, right? There's a lot that you can do with these thumbnails. There's a lot that you can improve, right? So that's the stuff that we talked about in the beginning. And a lot of that comes down to context, right? Like show how they're used, show like the, oh my God, it's behind the chat again. Just solve this. Show how it's used. Let's see, let's do it like this. Show how it's used, show the context. Give me something more to look at as well, right? You can really elevate like a piece really quick by just doing like you're doing here, right? This guy over here feels like it's part of like an actual world rather than just being a prop, right? This is in someone's basement or like in someone's attic or something like that, right? Like they're tinkering with it. With the rest of it, they're just like in a void. But that context will help you greatly. Number 2, breakdowns. Lots of it. We can kind of lean on to the same thing as well, right? Like the context there is that you want to showcase the breakdowns and make it like as easy to view as possible. Think about it in a way where like how do people look at work or at ArtStation, right? Like how do people browse ArtStation? Because we're building towards like the platform that we're on, right? And then number 3, let's see. Oh, there's actually something that I want to do first. I want to check out some of the context that you added as well, which I forgot to do again. So I have one location in my portfolio, but I'm not very happy with it. I just put it to show that I can build a scene in Unreal Engine 5, but maybe it's a good idea to hide this work for now. So that was a good question, actually. I would also say that this is a potential to hide for now. Because, again, I think it's especially because you have this, which looks good, right? I like it. But then you're going to this, and it doesn't have like necessarily the same amount of attention that you're adding to like all the panels and all that stuff. But then like a full environment, right? We lose something in that transition between the two. Because I still want to see that same sort of attention to detail, but then also applied to like an environment, right? Which is where it gets tricky because it's bigger scale, right? And with the attention to detail, I'm not talking about like, oh, every little spot has to be perfect, right? But like it's more about like the broad concept of like your attention to detail, where like you have a transition from like the floor to the wall, right? You have like a texture difference on the pillars where like people are gonna bump into it, like that kind of stuff. Let's see. I have commercial experience in creating brand assets for AR, but my soul wandered into do environment art. Now I'm trying to bring attention by creating props in some environments. I have an idea to build my portfolio with a few big environments and mix them with small dioramas. Sometimes I find cool prop concepts, which I can't ignore, and I'm working with too. What can I advise you to focus on as well? Just want to know pointers of big brothers, like 3D big brothers of the industry. Okay. Yeah, so that's a good question. For the next project, I would probably have a look at doing a diorama. I think that could be a good one for you. A diorama is like a small environment, right? Where you honestly just focus on like a corner of a room, a table with some stuff on it, tell a story, you know? That's the stuff that I want to see. So a small diorama plus story. Right? I want to see more story. What are you telling me? Right? That's what I want to see. And then back to the recap. I know we're jumping all over the place a little bit, but I wanted to maybe see if we can find like a third one as well. Definitely hide work you're not happy with and that you think is not relevant to the job that you're going to be performing, right? So for example, the AR thing, I would potentially put that in like a different folder. And if people want to see like other things, they can click on like that other work folder and then they still know that like, oh, he did some AR stuff. That's pretty cool, right? So you don't need to necessarily hide it, but you can put it in a different folder to make sure that people know that like, hey, this is not on my main page. This is just on like a separate page where I put like other stuff that I done, right? This is like a visual indication of, hey, this is different. This is not what I want to do. Because that's honestly like the most important thing, like for everyone that we talked about today. There's some people that kind of figured out what they want to do, like Bart, for example. But what I would love to see from an environment is someone who has like a specific focus, right? And I mean that as in like, what do you, in your free time, like if you had the choice out of everything, what would you want to do? And then try to make that like as industry applicable as you can, right? So I don't know. I'm just saying something. Maybe I love Fallout. Like, what would you do in your version of Fallout, right? And how would you build a scene towards that that is satisfying to you, show something new, and is also applicable to the industry? For environments, a big thing is composition. Understanding shapes and silhouettes is a big plus with an understanding of contrast. A minor point for thumbnails, I wouldn't show software icons. Yeah, we already mentioned the software icons. Like, I feel like that's such an outdated practice that people like hang on to. I see so many people still doing it, including myself. I was doing it until like pretty recently, and it's just there's no point. Just focus on the art. You know, let the art do the talking. And dioramas are great too. Yeah, I feel like if you want to get to bigger scale, you have to train yourself to get used to all the individual parts of making a diorama first, because dioramas can be used as like a little bit of a test bed of like, okay, I want to make a couple of assets and then maybe try my hand at like trim sheets or something like that, right? So you like transition from a more unique workflow with like a specific thought process to something that is like the complete opposite, like a trim sheet, right? But you don't want to jump into like a big project from the beginning, because that's going to be freaking overwhelming. Yeah, like Deputy Chief is saying, like they're nice and quick too. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because I mean, there's so many things to keep in mind, right? Like one of the things that we talked about in our community too was that there was some frustration from people because they were doing a pretty big environment, but they were spending so much time on one thing that by the time that they jumped onto another thing, and they spent like a bunch of time on that the older thing that they spent a bunch of time on is now like outdated because they're learning so much as they're going along, right? So the bigger your environment, the higher likely the higher the likeliness of that happening is, where like you have to focus on so many things and you're gonna be like leveling up like a lot doing those environments. But that also means that like the thing that you made in the beginning is not gonna look as good as like the thing that you made like last, right? Yeah. So dioramas are a great way of like focusing and just being like, okay, couple of weeks, that's it. That's when it's done, and then I'm moving on to the next thing. Before you can get into that like vicious cycle. Having to Awesome. But yeah, thank you so much, Anton. I would say best of luck in your future ventures, and I'm looking forward to like the next project that you're gonna be making. It's gonna be awesome. All right. That being said, we're at the end of today's portfolio review. I want to say thank you everyone for being here. It was awesome hanging out. Yeah, thank you for all the good pointers as well, Deputy Chief. That was great to have you pitch in a little bit too, which was great. And yeah, thank you for all the people that showed their work too. It was awesome to see. If there's any other questions, feel free to reach out to me over on Discord. And yeah, with that said, go chill out, have a nice evening, and I'll see you tomorrow for Whip Wednesday. Bye-bye.